begin our recording, right? Want to again say thank you so much for all of you who have joined us. February is the shortest month of the year, but for a number of key reasons, Black History Month is included in the month of February. I'm probably going to let Dr. Thelma Johnson explain that more a little bit later on in the program, but they have a wonderful theme when you're looking at Martha's Vineyard and Black History Month, and the theme is music, art, and the Black family. Music, art, and the Black family. I've been to the Vineyard many times, as many of you have been to the Vineyard. There are 6 towns in the Vineyard, including the town of Aquina, which used to be called Gayhead. And that town is in tribute and respectful of the Wampanoag people, the indigenous people who were not only on the island of Martha's Vineyard, but also have populated throughout which what we now know as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we definitely pay tribute to the Wampanoag during Black History Month, along with all of the other people who have come through and currently reside on the island of Martha's Vineyard. Well, I want to thank again my friends, my colleagues, those who are joining us from all over the United States and beyond, the Virgin Islands as well. And I also want to bring to your attention at this point comments that my mother made, 4 words that my mother made to me and my brother, Wilson Copeland. My sister-in-law is listening as well. And she said this to me many years ago. She's passed on and has been gone for quite some time. But as a child and certainly growing up, my mother said to me that you have a heritage. 4 words. You have a heritage. And she told me that over and over again. And I would always wonder, well, okay, I know I have a heritage. I understand that. But she said that to me, my father also, just to remind me over and over again that as an African American going back to the 1700s, and with all the trials and tribulations that my people had, that I still had a heritage, that my people had a heritage, and it was important enough to remember. And now, all these years later, I think about the period of time that we're in right now in terms of this pandemic. And I think about the fact that we have a vaccine, thank goodness, a couple of vaccines now that are being distributed. And when I look at COVID and the vaccine and the inoculation that is being done so that we can somehow gird ourselves and weather this storm that we're in, it's very similar to what my mother was telling me and my brother about we had a heritage. Those words alone and all the stories that came with them gave us an opportunity to inoculate ourselves so that we could get through this whole life that we're experiencing, that we would never forget our culture, and that we would always remember that as African Americans, we stood tall, we stood strong, and we always faced our issues and our challenges head on, regardless of what they may happen to be. And so again, I congratulate the organizations that have put this wonderful program together. At the top has to be the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, ASALH, started by Dr. Carter G. Woodson nearly 100 years ago. And around that same time period, the NAACP, this is the Martha's Vineyard branch, and also the Oak Bluffs Public Library. Oak Bluffs, for some of you who are not from the area, that's one of the towns on the Vineyard. And also the League of Women Voters, the Martha's Vineyard branch, and the Martha's Vineyard Museum. So those organizations have spearheaded this event and have done a marvelous job putting things together. Music, art, and the Black family. I was raised in Detroit, Michigan in the 1950s and the 1960s. And I can remember the parties I went to as a teenager and as a preteen in the basement of our families, at the basement of the homes of our friends and our family who lived throughout the city. Sometimes you just change the light bulb in the ceiling. Sometimes the basements were finished and sometimes they weren't. maybe a red light or a blue light, but the music pumped on because we lived in Detroit, and that was the home for Motown. That was the soul city. That was the city of Aretha Franklin. That was the city for the Supremes and the Temptations and all those quartets and groups and trios and the music that has lived on, even though some of those individuals have passed on. When you look at the Black community and the African American community, you can't help but really think about and look at the music that is important and in our lives. I think what I'm going to do right now, I want to go full screen for a little bit, and then I'll come back in a bit because I do have 2 videos that I want to share with you, but I want you to see a little bit more of me. Let me go on and do some things here and make sure that we're going to move on. So yes, growing up in Michigan, growing up in Detroit was an exciting time for me. It was a time for me to grow up and learn more about my people and learn more about other people as well, but do it in a way that was always respectful, always an opportunity for me to become educated and learn more about, and always pay tribute to my family because I had a heritage. So when I think about the music, I think about the syncopation, I think about the rhythmic patterns, I think about the music that was made on pots and pans and secondhand drums and secondhand guitars, etc., and the music that was made in the studios of Motown, which was in Detroit for many years before they moved out to California. You're talking about people of courage and people of action and creative people who knew how to manifest and put things together despite all that they had to face. And not just soul music and secular music, but also the rhythmic music and the celestial music and the music that represented the church as well. When you look at Black people and you think about music, I'm thinking about the music that now is heard all over the world. Typically around this time of year, I would be heading off to India, taking a group to India, visiting friends and traveling around the country. It's such a wonderful continent. And if I go there, or if I go to parts of Africa or go to Europe or whatever, wherever you turn, you're going to hear American music, and you're definitely going to hear Black music. If you're talking about jazz, as we played earlier, you're talking about jazz that's appreciated and valued all over Asia and all over parts of the world, and much of it because of the creativity of Black people. I think about our struggles. I think about the times that we have been through, but I also think about how resilient we are and how music is the emotional strength and energy that many of us have needed, whether we're working in the fields or whether we're working at home, whether we're working in somebody else's house and doing work, day labor work, whether we're working in operating rooms, whether we're working in far off places or far off land. Music is that sustenance in many ways to really keep us going. When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell, O Pharaoh, let my people go. That's an old spiritual, and one that got people through. That's the kind of music and those heartfelt words that people would sing in the fields as they were picking cotton or tobacco, as they were working in people's homes, sometimes not being treated very well. And they would sing those old songs, not just to be heard, but to give them the strength that they needed to move forward. So when you look at the Black community, you're looking at music from all different genres: secular, sacred, spiritual, uplifting, soulful. Let my people go, symbolic music in terms of freedom that was ahead of us when we were in slavery. Music is significant in our community. Art is also very, very important in our community. When I think about art, I think about these words: oppressed people using their own genius to define their identity. Oppressed people using their genius to define their identity. And again, when you look at the history of our people being in America since the 1600s as indentured servants and then ultimately as slaves, intermingling with Europeans, being controlled by Europeans, being supported in some instances and helped by the Wampanoag. I live in Lakeville, Massachusetts. And in this town, way back when in the 1700s, there was a popular and well-respected couple in this town, a black man, free black man, who married an indigenous woman. So even where I live and the children that they had and the legacy that they left here, we're talking about the Black family in that instance, making art, creating culture, and definitely creating music and using music as that vessel to communicate their feelings, their desires, their aspirations. And art can be looked at the same way in terms of one person said, we need our own art. We need our own culture so that we can contain our stories and keep our stories. So it's not just what's happening now in terms of art, contemporary art, but it's also how art has manifested itself throughout the generations here in the United States. Way back when she was born in 1753 in West Africa, this young woman was gifted, and fortunately, her giftedness and talent was recognized, even though she was a slave for much of her life here in Boston. She persevered. She was allowed for some studying to take place in her life. She was allowed to read and write, which was prohibited for some of the slaves during her time. She became the first woman, first Black woman, first African-American woman, first woman in the category of slavery to publish her book of poetry way back in the 1700s. And even though she passed away at the age of 31 in 1784, she left her mark, her art, so that we could appreciate her spirit, her thoughts, all these years later, some 237 years later, so that on January 20th, 2021, another young woman, in part connected for part of her years in Boston when she was a student at Harvard University and graduated and went on to become a young poet laureate, that she would be tapped and identified to become the poet to deliver a powerful and compelling message during our recent inauguration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, talking about Amanda Gorman. She just didn't come out of thin air. She is a continuation of the greatness of African Americans and how they have been seen, and in many ways, how they've been nurtured so that their greatness could come through, their talent could come through. And we saw that with Amanda Gorman just a few weeks ago. So when you think about it, you're looking at art being represented in print, being represented in the oral tradition, in poetry, in drama and theater, and on canvas, and digitally being represented as well. I want to show you now two short video clips, one of my niece and nephew, Lauren and Jumani Niamdi. They're the owners of Niamdi Contemporary Art in Miami, Florida. And they participated along with the other video clip, the individuals that I'll introduce to you in just a few minutes. They participated in my multicultural conference. It was held virtually in November with 62 wonderful speakers from 12 different countries and 6 of the 7 continents. Just a short clip to give you an idea of the significance of art today, contemporary art today. And then the next video clip I want to show you is another very talented young artist, both with masks that he has created and the filmmaking that he's involved in, Daniel Callahan, who's made a remarkable movie called Come On In. It was featured in the Roxbury Film Festival last fall, a compelling movie that deals with mental health issues and dynamics that Black men face. And it was produced by Narissa Williams Scott, who I've known almost her whole life, and now she's a producer in her own right. So I have 2 video clips dealing with art, first with the art gallery industry from Miami, and then here in the Boston area in terms of filmmaking and what it's like to do that. So we're going to go back to our slides, and I'm going to share them now, and we will watch these video clips.
Taste pre-COVID of an opening we had for one of our artists, Stephan Arbois, from born and raised in New York, but currently lives in Miami, Florida, but is of Haitian descent. So,
you know, because my father, when he started, I don't know if you know this part, but you knew he was a psychologist, but he started the gallery from a psychological standpoint. He was a developmental psychologist, so he would sit in people's homes and watch them operate. And one thing he felt that they were missing in his studies and his research was that Black people were missing a foundation, their foundation in culture. So nothing to kind of go back to and know who you are based upon. Like if you're Chinese, no matter what situation you're going through, you know there's something that exists before you. And a lot of times, a lot of cultures know that with African American, but they all know it through the arts. Because Chinese guys say, hey, you went on Great Wall, or, you know what I mean? That's a sense of pride. And so he said, let me get people to preserve their culture through collecting the art. And then they see it in the next generation, the kids see it, and then it becomes a part of you. And you have preserved your own culture, which is a really new culture for the grand scheme of things.
And from an African American point of view.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A real quick pitch on the film that you just saw. It is Come On In. It is a psychological thriller about an artist of color who is experiencing a mental crisis in which his mind, he's really experiencing his mind as an external reality that he has to navigate in order to find his place in life. And so I've been working on that. We just screened at the Roxbury International Film Festival the other week. Happy to have been accepted at several other film festivals, and the film is really getting a lot of attention, which is wonderful. We're very thankful.
My name is Narissa Williams Scott. I am the CEO and lead creative producer at That Child Got Talent Entertainment, We are a full-scale live event and film production company, everything from development through fruition. And we are so excited to have been a part of Come On In. From the moment I read the script, I was like, yes. I knew that it had something special about it. The fact that it touches on the mental faculties of a young Black man really stood out to me, because there are so few films that deal with mental trauma in the African American culture, and I felt that it was necessary in order for people to absorb the need for this in our culture. You just have to see it. It's a thriller. It grabs you, and all of a sudden you think you know what's going on, and you have no idea. I love it.
Lisa Simmons, director and our artistic director of the Roxbury International Film Festival here in Boston. We are going into our 23rd year, which is pretty amazing. I've been there since the beginning. Thank you very much. And you know, it's just so important. I loved hearing those guys talk about art and the importance of art and owning our own stories and supporting our own artists. And I can't wait to go down to Miami and meet up with them. And you know, it's all part of the same story. It's all part of us supporting each other, and that's what Rox Film has always been about. It's always been about supporting Black independent filmmakers, and specifically independent filmmakers from our community, from Boston, from the Boston area. Who, you know, the film festival started 23 years ago because we had filmmakers who weren't getting into other festivals because they weren't, you know, following that trajectory of what people thought Black film was about. And Black film is not a monolith. Black people are not a monolith, and our stories are not a monolith. And we need to be able to tell that whole diaspora, that whole continuum of who we are. And mental health plays a big role in that.
So again, I'm just thinking about the words that I gave earlier and the significance of those words that I gave earlier. Oppressed people use their own genius to define their identity. And here we've had two examples. We have George Niamdi, who has a PhD in clinical psychology, and sitting in the homes of his clients and his patients, and then realizing there was a gap and there was a void, and it was capturing culture regarding art. And now he is one of the leading art gallery owners in Detroit, Michigan, but it just didn't stop there. It now has continued on, first in Chicago and now in Miami, Florida, with his son, Jumani Niamdi, my nephew, and my niece, Lauren, his beautiful wife, and she's expecting another baby number 2. And just what they're doing now in terms of providing opportunities in large part for artists of color from all over the country and in other parts of the world as well, so that their expressiveness can be viewed and seen. I had a chance to go to their gallery a couple of years ago. They've now moved to a new gallery in Little Haiti in Miami, and it was just fascinating just to see the creativity and how a bicycle could be used as a work of art. It's just amazing in terms of what people of color can do and our creativity coming out in terms of art. And then I think about Daniel Callahan and this remarkable film that he has made. I'm sure that as Debbie and Wilson are so proud, and George and Carmen are so proud of their children, my niece and nephew, I know that Alan and Jeanette, Doctors Alan and Dr. Jeanette Callahan are very proud of Daniel and what he has done. He is an incredible mask artist. He makes masks and talks about the masks that we wear. And he literally draws the masks on your face and has had exhibits in terms of that for many years, and then switched over very easily and comfortably to filmmaking. And just a remarkable feature film, Come On In, that was featured in the Roxbury Film Festival, a very exciting film festival that now has been going on for 23 years, thanks to Lisa Simmons. And then Narissa Williams Scott, who gently guided him, shaped the film, they worked together, and the rest is history. It's just exciting in terms of what younger people are doing with this manifestation of music and art in so many different forms. Well, the last thing we talk about is the Black family and the significance of the Black family. We could talk about that for the entire 2 hours and beyond. But I'm going to share just a story in my family, because there are many stories, as we all want to capture. We need our own stories, and we need to tell our own stories, as Lisa Simmons has said. But I want to talk about a story that goes back to a period some 100+ years ago, and during the Civil War. The war was coming to an end. It was January, to be exact, January 12th, 1865. And having burned much of Georgia, I know we have friends here who are from Georgia right now. We thank you so much for joining us. But having that city burned and many other cities burned in Georgia during that ruthless war that took 4 years to end, and in many ways, we're still fighting the Civil War. And he stopped short of burning Savannah, Georgia. We're talking about General William Tecumseh Sherman, Union general, marched all the way to the sea, didn't burn Savannah. But all along the way, these Union armies all over the North, coming from the North and certainly middle part of the United States and the South, were picking up slaves along the way. As slaves were being freed from 1863 on, they would begin to follow the army troops to help out, to be protected. They were free. They wanted to start their lives all over again. And you can imagine how many slaves there were. So this created a predicament for generals like General Sherman. And so he set up a meeting on January 12th, 1865, with some of the leading individuals of color, colored men, during that time, to try to resolve the issue of what do we do now with all of these slaves. And I am so fortunate and blessed that one of the men sitting at that table was my ancestor, Reverend William Gaines, my mother's side of the family. We have Gaines reunions now every 2 years. And so I learn a lot about the history of my family as a result of that. And so that meeting led to what ultimately took place and what ultimately happened with the slaves of the South. And I'm going to put in the chat room for everybody the information where you can look it up. I've just put it in the chat room. There's an actual link. There's an archive article that lists everybody who was part of that meeting, what their positions were. He was a minister. He had been freed. His master was one of the Confederate soldiers, Confederate officers. And so he had to help serve a Confederate officer before the officer came back home to the plantation. And it's just amazing, these kind of stories that can happen. And this was my story of Reverend William Gaines and everybody who's part of my family. Not just making history, but in many ways making policy that impacted Black people all over the United States. So when you look at Black people and you look at families like mine and so many others, you're looking at Black people not just making Black history, but making American history, history that doesn't come and go, but history that literally leaves footprints and a legacy for us to lean on to. And so you have stories like that also when it comes to your own families, when it comes to things that you can do to bolster up your morale. When we have mental issues that are taking place right now because of COVID in many instances, and how we can sometimes carry a tune, carry a melody, paint a picture, write a poem, think about other family members who have come through hard times, and doing things in a way that will make us resilient and help us to move forward. Because when you're talking about African Americans and Black people, you are definitely talking about strong, resilient individuals who can definitely move forward and to move on. And so what I want to do right now, I want to take your questions. I'm sure you have some questions. I would love for you to put questions in the Q&A box. We'll answer them for maybe 5 or 10 minutes or so. We're going to take a break and then come back, and we've got a whole second half of the program in store for you. You don't want to miss it. You want to share it with your friends as well. So I would love for you to ask me some questions. And I'm going to ask for both Heather and Allison, who you're going to meet a little later on, to tell me if there are any questions right now in the chat room. We'd love to hear them. You can just put your questions in the chat room and talk to me about this intersection between music and art and the Black family. Would love to hear your questions. Heather or Allison, are there any questions? With our group, with our wonderful individuals who are here, we have a great group here of over 100 people.
Hey, yeah, this is Allison. And in the chat, we have a question from Sharon Watson Melton, who asks, how did you find out so much about your own family history?
Well, along with that, thank you, Sharon, for that question. Along with my mother saying you have a heritage, the stories were passed down in my family. So I should say that two things. Number one, individual stories, and we have countless stories in our family, were passed down to me and my brother. And then secondly, I've learned an awful lot about the extended family with the family reunions that I've been a part of now for some 35, almost 40 years. We've had these reunions since the middle 80s, every other year. COVID interfered with this year. They'll have another reunion next year, hopefully. So I've learned a lot about that. We had a family historian, Clarence Gaines, who unfortunately passed away, but he was the keeper of a lot of our stories. So he was very, very, very meticulous in terms of how he gathered stories. In order to get on the family tree, you sort of had to pass muster, and he wanted to make sure that those who were on the tree were really supposed to be on the tree. So I would say that, and then other stories that came from it. So between my parents, between my grandparents, cousins, etc., I learned an awful lot about my family. William and Louisa Gaines were the original family members on my mother's father's side who were allowed to marry in Georgia. And they were on a plantation in a small town called Shack, Georgia. Well, one thing led to another. They were allowed to marry. They had 14 children. And then one of their children had 14 children. I'm part of that lineage. That was, again, many years ago in the early 1800s. So from that, we've just built out a tree. We've learned as much as possible. Again, I have to give credit to Clarence Gaines, and a lot of the history that came about that we now know is a result of that. And so it's just remarkable in terms of that. So, now we're writing down those stories. What I'm doing now, and I would really suggest this to you and your family members, what I've done with my brother, we're having Zoom meetings with each other. I have to give my brother and sister-in-law, I have to shout them out because they celebrated 49 years of marriage, and we had a great big Zoom party for them and told a lot about their stories. But my brother and I, previous to that celebration in December, had 2 Zoom sessions together. We'll have more. And all we're doing is telling the family stories. I may ask a question, he'll answer it. He may ask a question, he may finish the story. We've captured it all, we've recorded it all, and we're going to turn it over to our children and our grandchildren so that the lineage can go forward. So that's something that you can do, all of you can do, regardless of your ethnicity. Just jump on Zoom or whatever your preferred video conferencing platform happens to be, hit the record button, just ask a series of questions that go back, and you can pull the information from your ancestors, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, and use that as your legacy that you can then share with others in your family and outside of your family. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Another question.
Carol, we've got a question here in the Q&A asking if you could talk about the importance of the culinary arts to the Black family.
Ooh, culinary arts. My goodness, you make me hungry. I would say that's a great question. I would say when you look at all of the food on the plantations, the food that was thrown away, that was then captured and eaten by Black people, some of that food has become a delicacy today. And that's exactly what happened. Depending on what your circumstances were, as you can imagine, most Black people didn't have much money, if any money at all. And certainly when I'm talking about the end of the Civil War, January of 1865, freed slaves, they had nothing, just the clothes on their backs. But again, I'll go back to the quote that I had before. Oppressed people use their own genius to define their identity. And that involves the culinary arts as well. Because when you look at some of the food that we eat in the Black community, I'll use one as an example, and that's chitlins. Chitlins are hog intestines. So you're back on that plantation, wherever you happen to be, and massa has taken all the good parts of a pig and left these hog intestines for you to figure out how to eat or whatever. Now, maybe from your legacy, you figured out how many ways you can cook rice, because rice also was grown in Africa. And sweet potatoes also. So you've made that an art form in terms of sweet potato pies and sweet potatoes that just melt in your mouth, all those kind of things. But also you take hog intestines, you clean them really well, like my mother did. I can see her now sitting at her stool in the kitchen, music on, and she's cleaning chitlins during the holiday season. So when we had friends who came over, that was a delicacy during that time. So now fast forward, a lot of Black people still eat chitlins, including my brother and sister-in-law. And if you prepare them properly, they can be quite delicious. It was throwaway food that became a delicacy. That's just one example. There are countless examples like that. Let's have one more question.
Sure, this is Allison again. So from the chat, we had someone who asked if you could please comment on using some of the ancestry tracking services like 23andMe and Ancestry.
Great question. Thank you very much for asking that. And I can answer from my own experience. I don't know extensively about some of the other services, but I did a fair amount of research on Ancestry.com. I'm sure all of you know that. I'll go on and put that in the chat room. I've put it in the chat, Ancestry.com. I took my test almost a little over a year ago. And I was very careful how I answered the questions. I wanted to not expose myself in terms of medical issues or anything like that, but then decided to move on with Ancestry.com and took the test, actually documented everything. I did put it on social media. I need to do a follow-up as well. And it was remarkable. But I'm glad that you've asked this question, because Ancestry.com, in my case, validated everything my parents had told me. I knew that I was from the South. I knew that there were white slave owners in the 1800s that had obviously had children with some of my ancestors, and that's why I'm the color that I am. I knew all that, but to have it verified by Ancestry.com, it was remarkable. So I found out that I was maybe 80% African from West Africa, but also the Bantu people who moved around to Central Africa and all the way over to East Africa, that I have that blood in me. The percentages have changed a couple. Now I found out that I had like 25% Nigerian, 10% Ghanaian. Again, the Congo area also have that. And so those percentages have changed over the last year because they update your files and they keep you posted on that. And I was about 18% or 19% European, including Irish and Scottish. It used to be part of Turkey in the Caucasoid area. That's sort of changed a little bit, but that's roughly my makeup. And they also traced that my people moved from parts of the South, Georgia, and South Carolina, which is absolutely true, and then moved to parts of Maryland, where my father's people ended up, and then my mother's people in the Michigan area. So it was very accurate from my point of view. I can't speak for the other services. I want to probably take another test with another service just to compare it with Ancestry.com. But if you're a person of color, it's remarkable the type of information that you can learn from that service. Well, this has been remarkable. I want to end it here and say thank you so much. Keep the questions coming in the chat room. We're going to be here, obviously, for another hour plus. We're going to take a little break now, about a 10-minute break. You can just stay in front of your screen because we have some music. We're going to play for you a wonderful music video. But we want this to be a celebratory morning experience for you, talking about music and art and the Black family. So I thank you so much for your attentiveness, your great questions, and we're going to keep it going. So here goes the music, 10-minute break, and we'll be back very shortly.
I pray open your eyes and watch us where we go, and help us to be wise in times when we don't know. When shadows fill the day, lead us to a place. Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be saved. Sogniamo un mondo senza violenza. Un mondo di giustizia, di speranza. And we'll remember we are all God's children, reaching out to touch you, reaching to the sky. We grace. Give us faith so we'll be safe. Our love that can guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be
Every thought, every step you take to get into a new infinity.
We're going to begin our program in a minute. We'll be back very shortly. Thank you all for the great questions that continue to come on in the chat room and in the Q&A box. Keep those questions coming. We'll do our best to answer them, either typing in an answer or answering them live. And you're in for a great treat with the rest of our program. You'll learn an awful lot about these various organizations and most specifically, the work that they are doing on Martha's Vineyard. Thank you all so much from all over the United States. It's wonderful how many people are here from different parts of the country. All right. Great. Well, welcome to part 2 of our program. And now we're going to hear from the interim executive director of the Martha's Vineyard Museum, Heather Seeger. Hi, Heather, take it away.
Hi, Carol, and thank you so much. I want to begin by saying how grateful the museum is to be a part of this program. It's our first of hopefully many years of partnership and collaboration. I first want to start by recognizing that Martha's Vineyard, or Noepe, has been home to the Wampanoag people for over 10,000 years. We are all grateful for their stewardship of this land and the many ways that they continue to strengthen our island community today. Our mission here at the museum is to inspire all people to discover, explore, and strengthen their connections to Martha's Vineyard. And as we approach our centennial, 100 years of telling island history, our focus is now really to ensure that the stories we tell through our exhibits and programs reflect the incredible diversity of our island home. We know that there are gaps in the people, places, and things that make up our own collection, and we'll need the help of so many people, so many of you, and other communities on the island to achieve our goal of telling a truer and more complete history of our island. The museum's role is to help our island to better understand who we were, who we are today, and who we want to be in the future. As our team was talking about the theme of today's program, music, art, and the Black family, we found the perfect clip to share with you about Cutie Bowles and the group of incredible women who came together to create the Shearer's Summer Theater in the 1940s, a time when acting was still considered a very white profession. In this clip, you'll hear from Cutie's daughter, island resident, and dear friend of the museum, Olive Tomlinson. Take it away, Olive.
Mother had 3 dear friends. One best friend, who is my godmother, is Sadie Shara Ashburn's daughter, Miriam Walker. Miriam has a first cousin, Liz White, so that was like a triad, whatever. My mother, Olive Bowles, known as Cutie, Miriam, then Liz White. These women, led by Liz White, were an integral part of the Shearer's Summer Theater. All right, thank goodness I have my father's old album. My father, William Bowles, was the still photographer for Liz White's productions. The first play Aunt Liz ever did was surprisingly in New York City, and it was called the Shara Summer Theater Presents. And the play was The Women. The Women was 1946, and I was in it. I was Little Mary. I'm 6 years old, and I'm playing Little Mary. And in the movies versions, Little Mary is very insipid. They all are insipid. But in Aunt Liz's version, there's an edge to everyone. And I'm 6 years old sticking out my tongue at the villainess. And then, as Aunt Liz, intrepid Aunt Liz said, I have an idea. Let's do theater on the Vineyard. And that was it. There was no budget. Everything was done. It was, let's chip in. And people chipped in. They were friends. A few had houses here. Again, this is the late 40s now, 46, 47, 51, that time. They were friends who would come up for a 3-week vacation and put in all of their time and energy with the Shara Summer Theater. But they were busy. You had to do a play, take care of your family, make scenery, do the lights, do everything. And my father did the same. He worked at the post office, and his time off was building sets, taking pictures, and listening to what Aunt Liz said. And she had grand ideas. Oh, she was wonderful. My generation marveled at how innovative and daring and charismatic they all were. They were very dramatic and very glamorous. They were all beauties, that's the other thing. And they would try anything. Aunt Liz literally said, I have an idea, like Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney. Let's have a theater. And they did it. They did it. Well, she did about 10 plays on the Vineyard, and for about 5 years, 10 different productions. The first was The Women in New York. Then she did 10 productions here on the Vineyard of different plays. I said the Slabtown Convention, Lysistrata, Anna Lucasta, Angel Street, and If Men Played Cards as Women Do. And then she began Othello, and Othello was a twin. And that was it. Now, Aunt Liz did maybe 1 or 2 performances of West Side Story for the young ones. I was no longer young, so I didn't pay any attention. I had 2 babies of my own. I can't imagine how they did it, because people were on vacation. They had to. I have photos of them sitting on the beach rehearsing, and I know at night they rehearsed. It can't be more than 3 weeks. It cannot be more, because people were working, and they were in their 40s, and they had kids. We kids, wonderfully, were on our own. We loved it. They did not have to. Well, they fed us dinner. That's about it. And we would go up to Shara to eat sometimes. So once in a while, we were send the children for this, send the kids for this, send the kids for that. We had a wonderful life because we would drop in and drop out. And I remember going to the movies on Circuit Avenue, the 7 o'clock movies, and then walking up to rehearsal at the school, Oak Bluff School. And I remember how we used to be so frightened going by the cemetery at night, but we would go all the way there and wait until rehearsal was over. It could not have been longer than 3 weeks. Aunt Liz, she was here for the whole summer, for an extended summer, because she didn't work full-time in New York. She worked backstage on Broadway. She was a dresser who helps the star. And I remember all the women she worked for, Marlene Dietrich, Judy Garland, Brenda Vaccaro, who was married to Rex Harrison, Lily somebody. There were others, but I don't remember. Sometimes she'd go on the road with the actors, sometimes not. It was flexible. And then towards the later years, towards the Othello years, she was running Shara, I think, also. The one I loved the most was she did Angel Street. It's called Gaslight also. It's a great play. And I remember it because I was 13, 14 years old. It was a great production. It's a great play. And my mom was the maid. Aunt Liz was Mrs. Manningham, who was being berated by her husband, and her husband was played by her brother, Lincoln Pope, and he was a wonderful actor, delightfully hammy and just right. And Angel Street lends itself to that kind of thing. And he's harassing Mrs. Manningham, and he's trying to drive Mrs. Manningham crazy, and he almost does it. This is what I remember. Mr. Manningham gives my mother, the maid, a note to take upstairs to Mrs. Manningham. And I saw my mother take the note, and I saw her jump. And that was it, and she took it up. So later on, I went up on the stage to tidy up or to do whatever I'm doing, and I see the note. And on the note he wrote, F you. Which made her on the stage. So that's, I know that they had a great time, the whole crew. I remember a production. There's a one-act play called Slab Town Convention. And it's a play that plays on the black theater circuit. And it's ladies in like the late 1800s who take over the church. Right. And there's a scene where Lincoln Pope, Liz's brother, who was just a wonderful actor, he's preaching. And he's tormenting these ladies. And he reaches up to the heavens. And it's in the Oak Bluffs old school. And a clap of thunder happened. And he milked that moment so. He waited, he used it and said, thank you, Lord. So it was fun. I was only in the women, because the rest were all adults. And then Liz White wrote a play of her own called Cooling Waters. And it was a play about slavery. And I think I can speak for my contemporary, Gail Jackson, Liz's niece, and I. We didn't approve. We didn't want to have anything to do with it. We were in it. I don't remember it. I have pictures of it. I'm standing there. I'm doing what my mother said to do. But I don't remember anything about it because I was at that prickly age when I didn't want to have anything to do with slavery. For us then, I have no idea how old we were, 12, 13, 14. It was shameful. We had no adult sense and no historical sense and no enlightened sense. So we didn't want to do it. We could not understand why they would want it. But it was a cast of thousands. I'm exaggerating, but lots of people. And then in the early 50s, she began to think, this idea percolated about doing Othello. So she did 2 productions of Othello. The productions here on the Vineyard were magnificent. They were at Twin Cottage. And so the audience sat in front of this big cottage. It's a double house built by the ubiquitous sea captains for his 2 daughters, connected in the middle by a wraparound porch. Then the second level was another porch, a smaller porch. And the best part, the top was a tower. And the actors came in from the side, from the woods on the sides, and worked on the porches and came out of the attic windows onto the balconies and did their lines. And it was just super. It was wonderful. The house is so dramatic. You don't have to do a lot. You don't have to do sets. And if Othello comes bounding up the steps saying, I've just got off of my ship and I'm here, well, he just got off of his ship and he's here. You didn't have to bring in a cardboard ship. The house spoke volumes. Then, it was so well received and so exciting, she thought, I want to film it. And I want to film it. The filming of Othello went on from the early 60s to the late 70s because it was a matter of raising money and getting the cast together and getting people back. And it was her labor of love. When they did Othello, there was no money. There were no grants. A few friends chipped in, were, quote, producers. And there was a time when Aunt Liz remortgaged Twin Cottage. But people gave their time and their talent and energy.
So if you want to hear more about the Shira Summer Theater, you can actually check out the museum's Facebook or Instagram today, where we have another post, another oral history, this time with Deborah Toledo, who's talking about her grandmother, Liz White, who all have talked about in that video, and the Shira Summer Theater in the 1960s. This summer at the museum, we have so much going on, including our showcase exhibition that features Cutie's artwork. She was also an artist, along with the sculptures of Maida Bowes Warwick Fuller, paintings of the world-renowned Lois Mailou Jones, and artist and educator Delilah Pierce. In addition, we'll be working with Union Chapel to help celebrate their 150th anniversary, and the Cottagers to celebrate 65 years of promoting education and cultural pride among African-American women in Oak Bluffs. We hope to see you up here on the Hill in Vineyard Haven. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Heather. I can't wait to get there. We have questions that are being positioned in the chat room and elsewhere. So again, if you're interested in your grandparents' property, head cottages, etc., definitely check out the answers that have come about in the chat room, but you can definitely check with the Martha's Vineyard Museum. Heather Seeger is the interim director. And also now we have Allison Malik, who's going to talk about Oak Bluffs Public Library. She is the library director. So we're going to take it away now and hear from Allison Malik.
Hi, everyone. So thank you, Carol. Good morning, everyone. My name is Allison Malik. I'm the director for the Oak Bluffs Public Library, which is open year-round to residents and visitors, usually when we're not in a pandemic. Until we can fully reopen, we are providing contactless hold pickup services and remote assistance, like for some of you who have had questions in the chat about your own family's history, specifically in Oak Bluffs, but really anywhere on the Vineyard. Please give us a call. We are answering remote questions through email, through phone calls. So call us, please. We miss you. At the top of the program, we saw some folks who were here. We asked them to type in where they're calling from, and I simply cannot help myself. So if you said you were from Oak Bluffs, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today. And that is Deborah and Kathy, Sydney, Arthur and Marie, Harry, Barbara, Carrie, Shelley, Muriel, and obviously Olive. We love you, we love you, we love you. So apologies to those who I missed. Or if you didn't have a chance to say that you're calling in from Oak Bluffs, I'm honored to be here to represent our great town. And of course, I'm deeply honored to be part of this annual event. I wanted to extend my thanks to Marie Arujo, Dr. Lorna Andrade, and Dr. Thelma Johnson for inviting the library to be part of this conversation each year. So the Oak Bluffs Library has a long history of ensuring that our collection represents the collection and preservation of African-American stories. Years and years and years ago, the library became the beneficiary of book donations from Della Hardman. And then more recently, Robert C. Hayden, the history scholar that moved to Oak Bluffs from Boston, donated the majority of his own African-American scholarly resources in 2016, and that seeded the Oak Bluffs Library's African-American collection of resources, which now includes hundreds of books, which are developed and curated by Nina Ferry. She is our head of adult and technology services. I invite you to go to our website and explore that collection when you have the chance. You'll find that on our website under special collections. Today, however, I am here to make sure that you know about a brand new service from the Oak Bluffs Library. And I'm going to tell you about this service by first telling you a story. Why? It's because the library's mission is to forge connections, and stories connect people. So here we go. You may stop me if you've heard this one. Not really. I don't know that you even can. A handsome king is blessed with superhuman strength, but his insufferable arrogance means that he threatens to wreak havoc on his kingdom. Enter a down-to-earth wayfarer who challenges him to a fight. The king ends the battle chastened, and the two heroes become fast friends, and they embark on a series of dangerous quests across the kingdom. If this story sounds familiar to you, it's because this is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was engraved on ancient Babylonian tablets 4,000 years ago, making it the oldest surviving story and one that has been told and retold through the ages. So why is the preservation of that story and stories in general important? It's because stories are a part of human culture, and it is through storytelling that generations have been provided with a compass for navigating the world. We have been telling stories throughout human history as a way of understanding ourselves. Yes, they can be entertaining, but they inform, they can inspire, and they can give us hope. And I think we can all agree that we could use some of that right now. All right, so before schools, before libraries, and before even books themselves, the human species was telling stories as a way of passing on knowledge and skills to each generation. Finally, stories are so important because they are part of a co-creative process. The storyteller, of course, describes, but then those of us who hear or watch or listen or read or interpret, we leave transformed, and we have something unique. And that is part of a process that is the alchemy of storytelling. So why am I taking up space and time right now during this amazing Black History Month event to tell you about storytelling? Well, it's because now, more than ever, is the time to tell your story. Your story does not need to have a torrid romance or an epic adventure or an evil villain to be worth preserving, but I know some of you in the audience, and that actually might be true. However, your story is important only because, and it is worth preserving because it is authentic and because it is yours. So how is the library going to help you tell that story? Well, for the first time ever, I would like to introduce to all of you this new project that the library has just recently funded. It's called Project Illuminate. It's a grant-funded recording studio and memory lab, which is designed to record and preserve the untold stories of Oak Bluffs. If you live or even just visit Oak Bluffs, or you have an Oak Bluffs story to tell, we want to help you tell it. And then we want to help amplify it for the ages so that it is not lost to history. So if you want, you can take a look at your screen right now and see that is a screenshot of the website. And I am going to, in a few moments, paste the link to the site itself in the chat so that you have a chance to visit. In the future, if you'd like to visit this project's website, which includes a sign-up form for how to tell us that you're interested, you can go to the Oak Bluffs Library website under Services. It's called Project Illuminate. We plan to develop the site with example stories and memories collected from our community, and we'll even have example topics to help jog your memory. So for example, who has a story about an Oak Bluffs business, or were you part of an event that happened here? What happened? What was the impact to you or to the community? And maybe this can be a little bit difficult, but possibly there was someone important to you who isn't here anymore to tell their own story. And you want to share who they were and why they were important and why they were worth remembering. And if you remember nothing else about this project, please remember this. This project is open to everyone. You may think that you needed to have lived as long as Olive Tomlinson to have your stories recorded, and truly we should all be so lucky. But Olive Tomlinson cannot tell your story. Only you can do that. And time is of the essence because, I mean, the future is not promised to anybody. So to that end, we also want to make sure that kids and teenagers feel that they too have important stories to tell. And we will be making special outreach efforts to help them learn how to contribute to this project. So if I can circle back and remind everyone of what Carol Copeland Thomas told us at the beginning of this program, you have a heritage and it is important enough to remember. Your story is important and worth preserving because it is authentic and because it is yours. Your history is American history. So please consider taking advantage of this project and adding your story to the pages of time. Your children, your grandchildren, and future generations that will live in a world that is impossible for us to imagine will thank you for it. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you, and we cannot wait to see you again at the library.
Great job. Boy, I'm excited, really excited, Allison. Thank you for that wonderful information. And again, once she goes off camera, she's going to put the link in the website. And let me ask you, Allison, before you go, this is even for individuals, maybe they just summer or they vacation, or maybe they just have one Martha's Vineyard story. You still want that information added to your collection, correct?
I'm gonna tell you a secret.
Okay.
About libraries. A not so secret.
Okay.
We are open. When we open, we are open for everyone. The grant has us recording these oral histories to preserve our local community. But what is local these days, right? If you have any nexus to us because you simply just got in touch with us or you dropped by, that's local enough for us. So please make sure that you feel like you yourself are welcome to contribute to this project, that anyone that you know who has any kind of a connection to Oak Bluffs, or you simply just come to the island specifically to participate in this project, you are welcome, and we will be thrilled to see you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison Malik, the library director for the Oak Bluffs Library. I'm excited. Again, the website, the link will be in the chat room. If you have any kind of story at all, go on and share it with the Oak Bluffs Public Library. And now we're going to move on and talk to Dr. Lorna Andrade, of the past president, current board member of the NAACP of Martha's Vineyard. Dr. Lorna, take it away.
Hello there again, everybody. I'm hoping you're enjoying this program. At this time, first of all, I was vice president, not president, but thank you, Carol.
All right. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. And secondly, I just want to share with you this short video about our national NAACP policy and procedures. And then we will take it to our branch here on Martha's Vineyard. I will tell you all about that and our new president and so on and so forth. So let's go with the video right now.
Dr. Lorna, I'll ask you to take yourself off camera. Awesome.
The NAACP. On February 12, 1909, what is now the nation's oldest and largest grassroots civil rights organization, was formed. The NAACP, which stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, has been a driving force in fighting race-based discrimination in the United States since its founding. In 1909, racial injustices were common. Segregation was legal in many parts of the United States. Employment discrimination was common, and voting rights were often denied. People of color across the country had to live with the fear of racial violence and lynching. And so, the NAACP was formed, built on the ideals of another group, the Niagara Movement. W.E.B. Du Bois, along with 29 other prominent African Americans, started the Niagara Movement in 1905. They met near Niagara Falls and wrote a manifesto calling for equal civil rights, the end of racial discrimination, and the full recognition of humanity for people of color. In 1909, many white liberals in New York City joined with some of the Niagara Movement's Black intellectual leaders, and from that group, the NAACP was born. In addition to W.E.B. Du Bois, other NAACP founders included renowned civil rights leaders Ida B. Wells and Mary Church Terrell. The NAACP's mission has been to achieve a fully integrated society with equal rights for all. Its national leadership has always been interracial, even though the greater membership has been mostly African American. To achieve its mission, the NAACP has not only focused on using the legal system to challenge discrimination, but also on convincing all people of the need for racial equality through speeches, organizing, and legal advocacy. Since its inception, the NAACP has had a long list of legal accomplishments and successes. The NAACP's first challenge was fighting Jim Crow laws, which maintained legal segregation. In 1915, the NAACP was instrumental in outlawing the Grandfather Clause, which allowed white people to get around literacy tests that were used to prevent people of color from voting in many states. From 1920 to 1938, the organization flew a flag outside its New York City offices with the words, "A man was lynched yesterday," to call attention to the rampant lynching occurring in the United States. In 1954, the NAACP's chief counsel, Thurgood Marshall, successfully argued the case of Brown versus Board of Education before the Supreme Court, ending the legal segregation of schools. During the Civil Rights Movement, the NAACP co-organized the March on Washington in 1963, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. The NAACP lobbied for the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which outlawed discrimination, and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which made it illegal to deny people the right to vote based on their race. Today, the NAACP remains actively committed to fighting discrimination. Its scope has widened to include fighting inequality in economics, healthcare, education, voter empowerment, and the criminal justice system. To this day, the NAACP continues to serve as an important legal advocate for all civil rights issues.
So now let me share with you about our branch here on Martha's Vineyard. Our branch has over 325 members. It's so special, whereas we are most diverse racially in membership. We even just had a president who was white for many years and who is our Oak Bluff Police Chief, Eric Blake. At the present, we have a young Black attorney, Arthur Hardy Doubleday, at the helm. We are so happy. We actually meet every third Saturday at 11 a.m. on Zoom now, and at the Oak Bluff Council on Aging when the pandemic is over. Why should you join us? All of our members are dedicated to the cause of civil rights. What are some of the things that we do? We collaborate with other groups on island to promote peaceful summer season. We raise funds to support local programs and national initiatives. We attend regional and national conferences with delegates appointed, and they are there to represent us and resolve and skills in the ever-changing fight for equal opportunity for all. We actively address civil rights violations. We offer scholarships pending the grades submitted per protocol. At present, we do not have a youth chapter, but our newly elected young president, Arthur Hardy Doubleday, was one of our youth members as he grew up. Our national organization has the ACTSO, ACT-SO, Youth Education Program, which includes the STEAMs. The STEAMs are science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We have special events, July, August, September, January, and February. Our 5K race, our MLK annual lunch and membership drive, and Juneteenth celebration. And of course, the many of you who are with us today, which is our Black History Month annual collaboration. With all that being shared with you, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lorna Andrade. And now we're going to have you to shift hats. You wear lots of leadership hats, and you're going to talk to us now about the League of Women Voters on Martha's Vineyard.
Yes.
And
Well,
you are the past president of this organization. Awesome.
That's right. That's correct. So at this time, we're going to show a very short film again about our National League of Women Voters, and then I'll talk to you about our branch here on Martha's Vineyard.
Every great dream
You can go off camera.
begins with a dreamer. Can you feel it? Can you see it? Can you hear it even now? We rise. Can you dream it? Can you dare it? Can you dare it even now? We rise. We are rising with the wind. We are lifted to the sky. Higher than we've ever been. We rise. We rise. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Can you feel it? Can you see it? Can you hear it even now? We rise. Can you dream it? Can you dare it? Can you dare it even now? We rise. We are rising with the wind. We are lifted to the sky. Higher than we've ever been. We rise. We rise. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Can you feel it? Can you see it? Can you hear it even now? We rise. Can you dream it? Can you dare it? Can you dare it even now? We rise. We are rising with the wind. We are lifted to the sky. Higher than we've ever been. We rise. Every great dream begins with a dreamer.
Well, oh, had a little hiccup there. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And I do want to reference that that was the Massachusetts National from our league. And we all derive out of our National League. Now, let me share with you about Martha's Vineyard League. Well, we started many years ago, probably 65 plus years, 1956. Do the math. We are diverse now, and we are nonpartisan in protocol. Our meetings are convened by conveners, mostly past presidents, and we try to attend the Mass Council meetings by Zoom and annual meetings as well. In the spring, we have local old board and new board meetings where plenaries of next year work is to be done. And we have portfolios of committees with chairs. For example, membership, candidates forums, legislative, education. We encourage our island schools to engage in civic studies. As you know, civics was taken out of the school systems many years ago, but we're encouraging it to be replaced back in. Spelling bees, and also environmental issues. This past year, we celebrated our 100th centennial campaign, whereas we registered 100% of islanders to vote. This past 2020 year, all of our League of Women Voters was honoring history from 1920 to 2020 and on. This was the passing of the 19th Amendment passed in 1920, giving the suffragettes, white women, the power of vote, and the founding of the League of Women Voters in the United States. Note, it took another 70 years for Black women, including those in the South, to be recognized to vote. Thanks to those individuals such as Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells Barnett, Mary Eliza Church Terrell, Mary Ann Shad Carey, Nanny Helen Burroughs, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, and Daisy Elizabeth Adams Lampkin. We meet every first Saturday at 9 a.m. on Island on Zoom. And when the pandemic is over, we will resume at the House in West Tisbury. On behalf of all our members that are on today, we invite each one of you to join with us. And yes, we do have male members. Thank you.
Dr. Lorna Andrade, thank you very much for the hats that you wear, being past vice president, past president of 2 organizations, and all the other work that you're doing. And I also want to say that this woman is not retired in any stretch of the imagination. She is now involved, I believe, in the vaccination distribution in Massachusetts. So give it up for Dr. Lorna Andrade. Thank you so much. Awesome. All right. We have another great woman. And when we think about Black History Month and the person who actually is responsible for starting Black History Month, we absolutely have to give credit to Dr. Carter G. Woodson. You're going to learn more about him now and the organization that you can join that he started almost 100 years ago from Dr. Thelma Johnson. She is the president of the Martha's Vineyard branch of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Dr. Thelma Johnson, thank you so much for joining us and for the organization ASALA that is responsible for Black History Month. Dr. Johnson, yes.
Coming, having a little hit here. There.
All right. There you go. Well, we see you and then you're playing peekaboo.
Okay. I can't believe this.
There you go. Great.
So we are so happy that you are celebrating with us our 5th annual Martha's Vineyard Collaborative Black History Program. During COVID-19, the national headquarters is hosting our first virtual Black History Festival. Please visit asala.org to participate. Here in Martha's Vineyard, visit mvasala.org to find out more about our branch activities. Our charter president was Bob Hayden, who gave the collection of library books to Oak Bluff Public Library. We're so happy that we call him our emeritus president. We are partnered with the Martha's Vineyard television station, the Martha's Vineyard Regional High School, where we have begun a program we call the Cooperative Oral History Program. In this program, students are taught to interview senior-aged Martha's Vineyard residents who may be full-time residents or summer residents to bridge the gap of communication between youth and older citizens. We meet in the Vineyard on June, July, and August, and we celebrate Founders Day in September, and we celebrate Dr. Carter G. Woodson's birthday in December. If he were alive today, we would be celebrating his 146th birthday. Asala was founded in 1915, and it is 106 years old. I do believe with all my heart that as we celebrate the 2021 theme, the Black family, representation, identity, and diversity, that he would be overwhelmed that we have included so much diversity to today as we are broadcasting the rich life, history, and culture of African Americans in Martha's Vineyard and throughout the United States. We are delighted to share the video, The Pursuit of Truth. Within the video, you will hear Dr. Woodson voice his opinions. At the end of the video, you will hear our branch member and our distinguished national president of ASALA, Dr. Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham. Watch now, The Pursuit of Truth.
Thank you. And Dr. Johnson, you can take yourself off screen, and I'm going to repeat the name, and I'll put it in the chat room at all. Dr. Johnson represents the association, I'll put it back here, there it is, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. That is the original name that Dr. Carter G. Woodson had for this organization that he started almost 100 years ago. And obviously he is responsible for Black history. So we're going to play this video now. Thank you.
Today, as a rule, we take notice only of the undesirable Negroes and ignore those who are struggling to climb upward. The Association for the Study of Negro Life and History finds by scientific investigation that the record of the Negro is not to be despised.
Oh, freedom.
By creating an arsenal of scholarship to combat the lie that African Americans had no history, Carter Godwin Woodson, known as the father of Black History Month, would begin to break the barriers of prejudice that would enlighten generations to come. Woodson was born in 1875 in New Canton, Virginia, the fifth of James and Anna Liza Woodson's 9 children. As the son of former slaves, Woodson grew up extremely poor, working on his family's farm and attending school only a few months out of the year. In 1892, Woodson joined the large migration of African Americans to West Virginia to work in the coal mines. There he met Oliver Jones, an intellectually curious Civil War veteran who operated a tea room for Black miners. Since Woodson was literate, Jones urged him to read a wide variety of publications allowed in the shop in exchange for food. Having engaged in discussions about the history of the race, Woodson claimed it was one of the most enlightening experiences of his life. In 1895, Woodson enrolled in Douglas High School in Huntington, West Virginia, completing his studies within a year. Woodson would go on to earn a doctorate from Harvard in 1912, in addition to his degrees from Berea College and the University of Chicago. He remains the first and only person born to former slaves to obtain a PhD in the field of history. Woodson traveled to Africa, Asia, and Europe, teaching in the Philippines and studying at the Sorbonne. Having been taught throughout his schooling that African Americans had no history, Woodson would devote his life to challenging the narrative. His exhaustive research would lay the foundation for African American studies to this day.
His writings are meticulous. He believed in scientific research at a time when many historians were not using it. Much of the fault we find in distorting Black history came from professors who taught history. They had an agenda, and often it was entirely wrong.
Woodson published almost 20 books over his lifetime, covering a broad range of topics in African American history. But he knew that to legitimize the contributions of African Americans, he would need to reach beyond the scholars. In September 1915, at the Wabash YMCA in Chicago, Woodson created the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. Now known as the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, or ASALH, the organization would become an outlet to educate the world about Black history.
This society publishes magazines, researches in Negro history, directs studies in clubs and schools, promotes the home study of the Negro by mail, produces texts on the Negro for schools and colleges, collects and preserves the valuable documents of Negro history, supplies libraries with special collections of rare books on the Negro, and educates promising and enterprising young men for service in historical research.
Woodson also established the Journal of Negro History, a scholarly journal where Black and white intellectuals could publish their studies. The journal also provided a medium to publish little-known primary documents on African American history. It must be noted that Woodson sought to launch a movement to legitimize African American history during an era of overt racism and mob violence. Yet Woodson believed that education was the catalyst needed to bring about social change and destroy the racist beliefs.
So what Dr. Woodson did was he was debunking the lies about us. So they were literally proving our humanity when he was building up these resources and documenting the truth about our history, and he was talking to real people who had done the work.
There's only one history, and all ethnic groups, all races should have chapters within that history. Few people thought like that before Woodson. He wasn't seeking any kind of superiority. He just wanted people to be equal. And once you know about each other, you're not holding their differences against them. You are respecting them more. To me, that's groundbreaking.
Woodson briefly returned to academia in 1919, serving as a dean at both Howard University and West Virginia Collegiate Institute. However, Woodson, who was deemed radical for insisting on textbook revisions to incorporate African American history, often clashed with administrators and other scholars. By 1922, he would return from West Virginia to Washington, D.C., and devote himself full-time to conducting research and publishing prolifically. That same year, Woodson purchased a home that would serve as his residence and headquarters of the association for the rest of his life. Here he would create his own publishing house, Associated Publishers, to print material on African American history ignored by others and generate an income for himself. The climate of the 1920s brought new interest in Black history. Movements in that decade, such as the Harlem Renaissance, created a heightened sense of racial consciousness among African Americans. Woodson was educating people of their heritage, one of which they could be proud. His home office became a community focal point in the Shaw neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Black intellectuals, activists, writers, and artists flocked to his home in support of the movement. There, Woodson also trained a new generation of scholars. While his protégés had immense respect for his passion and selfless dedication to the cause, Woodson's exacting personality often made him difficult to work with. He expected others to work as hard as he did, and would clash with those who did not share his vision.
And Woodson, he could be very blunt. He could be very direct and and very opinionated in many ways. And so African American and white audiences alike didn't always appreciate that, but that was Woodson.
And he was a perfectionist. Everything that went out of that office had to be perfect. And once we were typing, and we had typed about 300 letters, and he found out that one word was hyphenated wrong. We had to do those 300 letters all over.
By the 1930s, Woodson would become more publicly outspoken. In 1933, he published his seminal work, The Miseducation of the Negro, a scathing critique of systemic racism in education and of blacks who would not challenge it. The book would become a manifesto for generations of African American activists advocating radical social change. Woodson expanded his public presence by giving speeches and writing articles and columns in newspapers. He engaged teachers, clergymen, fraternal groups, and black civic leaders to reach the masses. Committed to teaching people at all levels of education, He created the Negro History Bulletin in 1937. The bulletin told the stories of the near great and was aimed primarily for the general black community. For Woodson, history belonged to everyone, and it was too important to be left to the scholars. He would create Negro History Week to ensure that the rich history of African Americans would be taught worldwide. The week-long celebration during the second week in February, in honor of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, would later evolve to Black History Month. It remains today as one of Woodson's most lasting legacies.
In our own country, we find that the Negro, in spite of his enslavement, achieved likewise. Negroes felled the trees, drained the swamps, cultivated the soil, produced the staples upon which the wealth of our Southland has been based. We shall overcome.
Woodson died in 1950 on the eve of the Civil Rights Movement. His pioneering efforts to preserve and publicize the historical heritage of Black Americans would prove essential in the struggle for equality. By institutionalizing the study of African American history, Carter G. Woodson would begin to break down the barriers of racial prejudice and hate and transform minds to this day.
He gave us a truer understanding of the United States by showing us that African Americans contributed mightily to this nation. But all this has happened because he brought truth to light.
Lift Every Voice and Sing is the adopted song for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. We will share with you a video of Lift Every Voice and Sing that was created in 2008 when we joyfully welcomed our first elected African American president, President Barack Obama. The words are forever powerful as penned by James Weldon Johnson. We opt to use this version that is representative of a milestone within African American life, history, and culture in the United States of America. We must say we are overwhelmingly happy that President Joseph Robinette Biden is the current president of the United States of America. Yet we share with you our milestone video of Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Bring with the
And that concludes our program today. We thank each and every one of you for participating, for staying, for listening and learning, and definitely celebrating the success of Black people that goes back hundreds of years. Please continue to put your comments in the chat room. We're going to bring all of our illustrious participants on for their final comments. And again, we say thank you so much for being with us and staying with us for this entire period of time. Again, Heather Seeger, Dr. Lorna Andrade, Dr. Thelma Johnson, Allison Malik, and Marie Arajo. Thank you so much. And they're going to give their final comments. And also, I've suggested that the recording be actually put in either the museum or the library. So would love to have some clarification, because I know that those who have been on this presentation today will want to watch it again and share it with others.
Yes.
And we'd love to, first of all, we'd like to have Allison Malik to speak, and then Heather, then Dr. Thelma, Marie, and Dr. Lorna.
Thank you, Carol. On behalf of the Oak Bluffs Library, thank you to all of you for joining us today, and thank you to my fellow panelists. I've pasted the library's phone number and general email address in the chat for those of you who have additional questions and want more information about Project Illuminate. We're excited to hear and preserve your stories, and until we can see you again, stay safe and healthy, everybody.
Thank you as well. The museum is now open. It is safe to visit, and there are so many treasures to see, whether it's Dorothy West's typewriter, a young Skip Finley in a bathing suit, or the pulpit of the Bradley Memorial Church. Those are just a few things that are part of our permanent collection and on view. We look forward to seeing many of you this summer. If you visit our website, mvmuseum.org, which I'll put in the chat, you can find more information about our current and past exhibits, our virtual programs, our educational resources, and of course, membership. Every visit online and in person offers unique and exciting experiences that are vital to creating a more informed and connected community. And we're so happy to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Thelma Johnson.
We thank you for joining us for the 5th annual collaborative Black History program at Martha's Vineyard. We invite you to visit asala.org and join our national organization, and you may become a branch member with us after you join the national Asala by going to mvasala.org and becoming a member of our branch. We are a summer branch and meet generally in June, July, and August, and we have full-time residents who are members, and we have people who are summer residents who are members of our branch. We invite you to join us, but visit these websites to learn very much more about what we do. Again, thank you for joining us, and make sure that you find your own heritage story and find out your background. It is good to know from whence you have come.
Great, thank you very much. And Marie Arajo.
Thank you for joining us for our 5th collaborative event, and we hope you enjoyed it. I did post in the chat room if you are interested in joining either the League of Women Voters of Martha's Vineyard or the Martha's Vineyard branch of the NAACP, the mailing addresses and the dues for the yearly dues. We'd love to have you join both the organizations as well as the SALA. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. And bringing up the rear, but certainly in an elegant and sophisticated way, Dr. Lorna Andrade.
Well, I can only say, first of all, I want to give a big shout out and a thank you so much to you, Carol Copeland Thomas, for this wonderful educational presentation, for your singing, for your love and sharing with your family members as well. It's just been fabulous. This is our 5th year, and I want to tell you, for our 5th year, this has brought my heart where it should be, because it's been pretty sad in the past with all that we've been suffering with the pandemic. and so many of us who have lost so many family members and friends and associates. I want to bring us back to each one of you, Heather and Allison, and of course, Dr. Thelma for being and Marie, my co-host, for being a part of this panel. It was wonderful. I worried a lot. And for those of you out there who got emails from me, and if you got something suspicious, I just want to let you know, delete it, because my computer was hacked within the last 24 hours. So please go through your computer, delete anything that looks suspicious. I had to throw that in before everybody left here today. I want to get back to Carol. Carol does so many things, her worldwide outreach. She does do tours, so be in touch with her about tours. Go on and look at some of her multicultural symposium series. I'm a member. There's a membership. You can go to her website and you will continue to learn. And as I stated in the chat, we must know our past to know where we're going. We have to do research. My background has been in the science field, nursing, medicine. And so to do my history, to do my genetic study was important to me. And I hope it's important to each one of you. God bless you. I hope we all can be in person next year. So be safe. Please, please get your vaccine. It's so important. You must be vaccinated. Continue to wear your mask, stay distance, only stay in your bubble, and God bless you. Be safe. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and definitely continue to celebrate Black History Month, not just in February, but throughout the year. Thank you so much. God bless. All right. We're going to have our panel members to stay on and say goodbye to all of our friends all over the country. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.